Now, and this is just our one funding source.
That's
So
right.
now, if there are some other areas here, then we as the council need to develop another list of concerns, because as you said, there is another source of funding that would be coming down with infrastructure plan.
Correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, on the infrastructure plans, they actually go back and they're going to be looking for projects that are shovel ready, which we can basically pull off the shelf and submit to funds.
That's right. So you all know, kind of the way it works is once you decide you want to do a project, you can't really just hire a contractor and say, here's what we want to do, go get after it. You have to actually have an engineered set of plans and specs, and you have to follow public bid law, and all those criteria to be able to, legally bid a project and get a contractor on site to perform the work. So having a shovel-ready set of plans sitting on the shelf ready to go not only shows the great need for the project, and it's also going to hold more weight once you submit an application or whatever it's going to look like for some of this money coming down, to make a request to get some of that money. But it's also going to help speed up the process in which you can actually get a contractor out there. One thing that we're kind of worried is not a good word to use, maybe concerned, is just right now there's so much work going on in the construction industry. And then with so much money coming down for infrastructure, contractors are going to be very busy. And if we don't beat some of the other places to the work, if you will, then it may be difficult to find a good contractor who's able to perform the work. So that's another advantage to having a shovel-ready project. Not only, being able to show a great need for the project and request that funding, but also help speed up the process in which you can actually spend the money.
Were you guys able to get any additional information as to under the infrastructure? I know about this one, Senator Poirier. What other projects might be eligible under that?
We have not really heard. All we've heard so far, like I said, is water, sewer, and drainage. I do know they've said broadband before. Unfortunately, we don't do anything with broadband, so I couldn't really answer any questions as it relates to that. But as far as infrastructure goes, it's those three things plus the possibility of broadband.
Are you saying we need to go ahead and go forward and bid it and everything?
No, no, sir. You would just have a set of plans and specifications sitting on a shelf, ready to go once this money comes down. Use something that we've done before, so a tap application, for example.
And what they really want is if they send this money down, if they call, let us know next week we got the money, they want it to bid out the following week. They want the job to get started as quick as possible to get the money in.
So like a tap project, we don't do plans and specifications on the front end. We wait until we get the money. Y'all are awarded the tap here recently this past year, and it takes several months to be able to do all that. Having the plans ready to go would expedite that process to where, just like Michael said, once the money comes down, you pretty much have a set of plans you can pull off the shelf and go right to work with.
Okay, so how much money or something will we have to commit to even if we do not do anything?
So it's going to be, and you see some cost estimates in this package that you have.
I'm
here.
talking about like engineering stuff.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. So there's engineering fees shown in those cost estimates. What we would like to do is kind of go back through there. I think there's maybe another project or two.
Yeah,
We
now,
may need
there's
to look
one
at.
over here on Ivy Street, the big drainage ditch where several years ago we had to go in that fix because the sewer line was falling in. We really need to do something with the rest of that ditch. Because it's actually a road and we need to put a fence up between the apartments and the ditch itself.
But go back through, so there's 5 proposed projects in that package that you have there. So that would make 6. So really go back through.
What about Bartlett Avenue, Mike? What y'all come up with Bartlett Avenue?
Actually, Bartlett Avenue, at this time, we could probably try something down at that empty lot that the city owns. It's gonna be kind of hard because you have to put a pumping station there to actually pump it over to John. Now, it could be done. It's just, you know, it's a matter of cost on that. If we could have got that house that was in foreclosure, that would have been the ideal place to put it. And we could have actually done, gravity flow back around the Johnson from my.
What can you come up with some kind of price on that too?
Yeah, no, they could do some else.
Yeah,
Y'all got the paper because we didn't use it several times. But
Yeah, now, me
Correct.
and Chase looked at it the other week when he was over here. And, that's what I was talking about, you know, that property that we already own would probably be the only option we got as far as putting any kind of pumping station or anything right there and pump it back over. Of course, we'd have to upgrade Johnson Street pumping station. Because you'd actually be adding more water to it.
because it's like that water, you probably get about 6,000 inches of rain and it takes several days for that water to do.
And the thing about it, the house is closest to that property that the city owns. Of course, it's setting back uphill just a little bit. That's why I say it take a little more, you know, to put one up there. But the property closest to it, that's the one that gets flooded, you know, the worst.
Which foreclosure, you talking about the one by,
Right there on the corner of Bartlett. It was in foreclosure a few years ago.
not the one that's by the Pickens house right now, the one that's.
And just so there's no confusion, the cost estimates that you're looking at, and this goes back to hopefully answer your question, Mr. Melvin, is kind of cost estimates that we've looked at projects over the years. You know, just like this project right out here, I think we talked about back in 2018. So it's been a couple of years since we've looked at it. We found out this information that senators wanted funding request the week before Thanksgiving, and they said, hey, we need them before Thanksgiving. So it was a very, very quick turnaround. So we kind of just compiled all the past projects that we had looked at into this package and sent on. So before we actually say engineering fees are locked into what you see on that piece of paper, we would like to take a week or so and go and look at all these projects with Michael and better define scopes and give you much more accurate engineering fees, because hopefully what we're looking at here is on the high side and they would actually come down a little bit, just to make sure we're trued up on that.
We're over $150,000 of estimates on these 5 projects before we do anything.
Right, depending on what you added up, I can't remember what's shown in there. There's 2 separate, there's an engineering fee and then there's a construction engineering and inspection fee. We really just
I'm
be
looking
looking
at
at,
the engineering design.
okay, yeah, you're looking at the right thing. Basically, the survey fee and the engineering design fee is what we'd be looking at. But like I said, I'd like to be able to go back and better define the scope of work over the next week or so, and at the next council meeting, be able to present a proposal for the engineering fees for each project.
Now, let me, this is separate than what the infrastructure fund is.
Yes and no, that's a hard question to answer, just because we really don't know what this looks like yet. I guess to try to clarify that a little bit. Senator, let us know, hey, there's gonna be some money coming down. Get us some requests. Now we think, and here's where I'm kind of, can't answer your question 100% because we don't know for sure. That this is, what we requested is gonna be some of the infrastructure money coming down. Just like the city got Rescue Act money, which I think can be used towards engineering fees. The city got 1.4 million in Rescue Act money. The state's gonna be getting some of their own money from the Rescue Act that they're hoping to be able to divide out across the state, plus the infrastructure bill money that's gonna be coming down as well. So there's a lot of money coming. We don't know what it looks like completely, because I don't think anybody does just yet, of how it's gonna come down and where it's gonna flow through, whether that be ADM or a DECA, or if they just say, City of Monroeville, we know you want to do this project, here's, just using round numbers, here's $250,000 to go complete this project. We really don't know what that's gonna look like yet, just because we don't have enough information. I wish we had more information.
Well, I know everybody's gonna be, you know, having several projects. Have they given you any indication of possibility of how many might be funded out of your list, 1, 2, 3, or anything like that?
They haven't really given us any indication as to how many will be funded. What I can tell you is that, and I can't remember the number right off the top of my head. I want to say it was somewhere around $550 million that they're going to have in the first quarter of 2022. And when I say they, that's the state that they're going to hand out across the state for water, sewer, and drainage projects. And then what we were told, and again, this is just what we were told, it's not set in stone, but somewhere around June of this year, the state's going to be receiving somewhere around $2 billion to hand out across the state for same type projects. So that's where, if we have shovel-ready projects, could be a really big advantage for the city.
Yeah. That's one reason I'd like to go ahead and get all these projects ready, have them set and ready, because even if half of them gets funded this time, next year, the other half may get funded.
Right.
You know, but if we, go ahead and get it ready now, and we'll have it.
I've got two other areas in District 1 I want to be considered. One of them's at Lloyd and Johnson there, kind of where that bowl is. Going back toward West Clayton
Oh, yeah.
and Johnson there. And then, of course, York, we talked about last time, York.
What was that second one?
Now,
York and West Street.
York?
that's where we put them concrete plumes a few years ago, the heat has got that, drain at, Tedland Pond over on their place.
Yeah.
And we went in and put them, concrete drains and stuff.
Okay.
So last
Yeah.
year, to get a lot of those people.
Lord, we've, gonna work on that with the sewer department.
Okay.
And, also now, I looked at one drainage issue over there off of Ivy Street, and we could actually fix it with a sidewalk project. Have that in with a sidewalk project, and that way we can put the curb and gutter in and put the drainage in that.
Paxton, so if we do all the engineering and all those expenses on these, and maybe 2 or 3 of them get funded, how long are the rest of the projects good for, the engineering and that kind of thing?
Oh,
Are they good for 5 years down the road? Or
Yeah,
10
so-
years?
So really what we're looking at is projects that aren't really going to change that much over time. As far as scope goes, the erosion, this caused by the drainage may change some, but as far as the engineering design goes, now it's project by project, so I hate to say it's good for 25 years.
Right.
Because it is case by case, but for the most part, most of them, if we design them today and you put them on the shelf, more than likely, with the exception of maybe making a tweak here or there, 10 years from now, they should still be good. So,
Very good question, Alex.
and that's something that we would definitely structure in an engineering agreement, because this would be unique compared to what we've done in the past. Normally, the process is that we have a contract in place to do engineering design, and then we move right into construction. In our contract on something like this, we would have some type of clause in there stating that, once the project actually receives funding, if there are tweaks that need to be made to it, then we're going to make those tweaks as part of this cost and make sure that it goes to bid successfully, and really not saying, here's a set of plans, best of luck. We would actually see it through to make sure it goes to construction at the appropriate time. But that is a really good question.
You're talking about just these $2 million. That's my next concern is what we're already hearing. Is there's 20 other things out here that need to get something done.
Right.
And are we gonna get everybody? And if we don't get everybody, what kind of slack we're gonna get out of that? A couple of these things on here, I see are on the, we're gonna do it like the veteran situation. We're gonna do the same thing we did down the bottom up there by the school if we don't take care of one way or the other.
Right.
We're not having a constituent on our back about they build a house in an area that floods.
Right.
Even though I'm concerned with that, but it's a different situation at some point of the overall community safety and so on, so well-being. But how do we pick the one out of this? We get $600,000 and of that, which one do we pick first? And, you know, we're getting into that issue also. But the other concern is that the other dozen or more things that we gotta look at too.
Right.
If we don't get one, somebody said, well, why we didn't do ours? And now we liable and any of that stuff.
That would, as far as priority, putting them in priority, you need to actually, once we get the funding, we need to go and look and see which one is progressing the work and the fastest. Because, you know, some of these drainage projects, and some of these piping and all that, that's just like the lining of the pipe over on James Avenue. You know, I'm pretty sure, and the guy that cambered it and all, they've been dealing with it for years, they said, you know, it may last another 5 years. Or it could last up to 10. Then again, something may happen, and you know, it may have a collapse in it. Within 3 years.
Bottom line, we don't know we're gonna get a dime.
Well, that's true.
We don't know, you know, and what we're talking about is pie in the sky. I mean, we just don't know. We have, you know, other than the 1.1 or whatever, that's all we know for a fact that we're gonna get. I mean, we can spend $500,000 on engineering studies and all this kind of stuff. And then, hey, we may not even get enough money to pay for the engineering study.
Mr. Larry, I can't argue with you on that.
I mean, we just don't know.
Well,
There's just not.
The whole thing is to have discussion to start the process. You know, we may not get past the start, but we have to have discussion to start the process. And I agree with Councilman Vocal, everything on this list, we don't know what we're sticking and what won't. And, you know, until we actually get down to and we get more information, but at least we're starting the process to know what the engineering fees would be for the different projects. And then we can get down to the point of actually making an application form. And then move from there. But the good thing about it is like it's shovel ready. Anytime any other money comes down and we want to do a grant, we just reach on the shelf and pull that one off. You know, when you knock down, that you go through. And I think everybody's going to have to understand that, including our citizens. You know, we're not the ones where all this money is coming from. It's coming from the federal government, and it's going to be competitive. And the only reason I wanted to get started with the planning first is because you're going to be in competition with Huntsville, Montgomery, Mobile, and places like that. And if they already got them and they flooded, you know, we'll never will come.
Well, that's my concern is okay, this is coming to Montgomery and, but what's the filter gonna look like before it actually gets to us? You know, of course, nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, but so much of it's going to be on the way I see it, and the way I've seen it done in the past, so much of it's gonna come on first come, first served. If you are at the top of the list, you more likely to get consideration if you sit down there at the bottom.
Well, if they do it like they've been doing all the other free money that they've been sending, everybody got some. I mean, you were told you were gonna get 1.4 million. They didn't say, Monroe, what projects you got?
No.
Yeah, they said, Monroe, you'll get 1.4, and I looked for that to be a similar scenario this go round, because it's essentially it's federal government. It's an election year, and I just, you know, if you go to a municipality and they say, we're gonna give you 2 million, and they say, well, we don't really have anything to spend it on. Then that 2 million might be out there for anybody and everybody. But I really think that you're probably gonna see it proportionalized again.
Well, with it being an election year, that's probably the key. They're gonna cover.
Everybody's gonna get some.
Yeah.
They'll cover.
You know, and I believe that they'll dictate by population or whatever, how much you're gonna get.
You see, this is one thing that happened with the, not this COVID money that came down, But prior to, and this is something we applied for also, it was so many cities and towns didn't have a plan, they had to turn money back in. And so, with that excess money being out there, we've already gone through and made an application to Rebecca, for some projects to deal with that.
Well, and a lot of where that comes from is not that people didn't want the money, so to speak. It's the red tape that comes with the money, in that, you know, they're gonna tell you, just like the COVID money, I say COVID, the Rescue Act money that the city received. They put limits on to what you can spend that money on. Water, sewer, drainage, and broadband are on those as far as infrastructure goes. Now, I'm not sure what goes on outside of that because we don't live in that world. But we see the same thing's probably gonna happen with any other money that comes down. They're gonna say it's gotta be used on water, sewer, drainage, or broadband as far as infrastructure goes for the very foreseeable future.
The reality too is that 2 or 3 of these projects, whether we get grants or not, we're gonna need to do in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Exactly. And that's what I was about to say. It kind of goes back to your point, and yours as well, a little bit, in that if you do it, and we're not trying to sell you one way or the other, we're just trying to assist the city the best that we can. Is that if you go ahead and design some of the prioritized projects and you have them sitting on the shelf, it's hard for me to believe that there's not going to be money come down within the next, let's say 5 to 10 years, just draw it out there quite a bit, that these projects can go for. So
Some of the ARP funds are gonna take up, general fund expenses, right? So we're gonna have some money, before we get the other, so.
and that's where I wish we were 3 months down the road from this thing and we could have an idea of what the money coming down is gonna look like. But to your point, I mean, at some point, some of these projects are gonna have to happen regardless, because if they don't, you're gonna lose the road and then you're gonna have to do it anyway.
Yeah, my thing is, if you're gonna, this all of them, we can prioritize as we go.
Yeah.
Just, this is 4, 5, or 6 of them.
Right.
Let's do all of them.
Yeah, well, like I said, that was the starting point, because we went back and some of these, they already had the information and everything. But, if we got some more, if we got some more, like what you just mentioned, we go back and add that to the list. That was the reason I wanted to do a special work session and, give everybody an opportunity to, I guess I'm putting this Hunt on the spot, to contact Ms. Hunt and tell her what additional projects that you're looking at and we get passed.
And one thing to keep in mind too is once we talk about drainage and not trying to make it any more complicated than it needs to be, but you're really looking at major drainage improvements. Like Michael said, with some of the sidewalk money and other money coming through, you can take care of some drainage improvements with that, minor drainage improvements. Whereas if you've got a yard or something that's washing out or beside the road that's washing out, some of that you can pay for with tap money. So you fix the drainage and then you get a sidewalk along with it. So really need to be focused on to have the biggest impact, some of the major type drainage projects throughout the city.
So once you get all these other areas added to the list, you and Mr. Lashley get together and then prioritize the ones that are worse than the ones that wait a little while.
We can do that if you want us to.
Yeah, I think that'd be the best thing.
Yeah, do it, kind of like we do the pay, so that we get a recommendation.
Yeah, we can definitely come back with a recommendation with cost estimates, showing engineering fees on each one. Like I said, we can structure that in a way, assuming we want to move forward with this, to make sure that if that set of plans sits on the shelf for 2 or 3 years, once it's time to actually take it to bid, to construction, whatever changes need to be made, we can make sure that's included in the engineering contract and then go from there.
Hey, I got one more question.
Yes, sir.
On this list, I was looking at with the topography, survey and then the easement survey, is that like a base price for each estimate when you do it?
No, it varies. If I mentioned your question correctly, it varies based on the project.
No, because I was looking at it and I saw, the engineering design was different and the cost on this one than it was on that one with these other 2 would stay the same.
Yeah, a lot of times the survey fee is gonna be, kind of just using round figures, survey fee on most of what we do is gonna be somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 or $8,000. Engineering design fees are gonna be a percentage of construction. Same thing with construction, engineering, and inspection or observation. I can't remember how we worded it on these cost estimates.
What's the difference in those two?
So engineering design gets you to the point from the time, like we are today,
Right.
to the time we have a full set of plans and specs ready to go to legally bid the project, to basically contract with a contractor, a construction company. The engineering inspection comes after that during the construction phase. So that's to help manage the project through construction from the time that you now have a contractor on board all the way through project closing. So
That would be included in your.
what would be included in our contract right now would just be the survey fees and the engineering design. The construction, engineering, and inspection would be left off for right now, because there's really no need for us to enter into a contract for inspection, knowing that we may not do the project for another 2 or 3 years. And again, we wouldn't bill you for those fees until the project actually goes to construction anyway.
So basically, you're just getting billed for the survey and design.
That's right. That's right.
Would your engineering and various preparation costs be eligible for the COVID funding money?
So what I do know, talking with William Scott, the city's Rescue Act money can be used to cover engineering fees as long as it's water, sewer, drainage, of course. And then we do anticipate that some of this money coming down would be eligible for reimbursement. So we would make sure we keep a good track record of everything that the city pays out of pocket. If there's anything out of pocket, I don't know if most of it will be Rescue Act money or what, but if there is anything out of pocket, we would keep a good track of that, to where if the funding becomes available and engineering design is an eligible cost to that project, that the city can then be reimbursed for those costs. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but if it did, we would make sure to take advantage of that.
I thought it would only be if we actually do the project or.
If correct, if the project gets funded.
Yeah, I'm always right.
When,
Could I point out something, please? My name is Dora Pelham, and I'm here about the drainage situation at Golf Drive and Chestnut. That is more than just a drainage situation with houses in a low spot. We're also talking about our plug that's underwater when you have this flood. And we're talking about hydroplaning that happens repeatedly at that corner. So much that it winds up in people's yards. Michael and always had it in the paper again and again over the years. So it's not just a house in a low spot. We're talking about liability for the city. Sooner or later, somebody's going to get hurt. Not so much due to flooding, but because the water is there.
That is one of the top ones on our list that we're working on.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
On here, Ms. Dora, it shows, site number 1, so hopefully that means it's number 1.
Well, I did want to point that out because we're talking about actual liability that might be charged into a different amount of funds from something else. This is fire, this is traffic.
and so you know, we're actually in the process of a drainage study in that area right now to help come back with some recommendations as to what can be done. Mayor Andrews, just so we have clear directive going forward, when would you like to try to have some of the stuff in place and for us to actually provide a proposal of sorts, if you will?
Let me, because I had some people bring up some additional
Okay.
things. Let us get that online and get the Michael, so we can go through and look at those.
Okay.
There's some things on here, like you said, some that lining.
Yeah.
Is good to be done, but it don't have to be done immediately.
Right.
And so that goes back and enable us to actually sit down and kind of reprioritize, and then we can really come up with a list that we give to the council based on their input.
That sounds great.
No, I have one more question, Paxton. I understand that all this money probably, it sounds like $2 million, there's not gonna be a lot left over, but if there were funds available in the infrastructure money, could that go toward a new project?
Or,
And not only repairing the drains and things like that that are important, but I'm talking about like the civic center that we were discussing, doing. Could any of that infrastructure money be used for site prep and drainage and sewage and water out there?
right, it's hard to say. My knee jerk would be yes.
I
As far as
think we
drainage
could
and water and
because we
sewer
also
go.
do a COVID,
Right,
you know,
right.
case.
Kind of everything that, all the recent money that's come down, stuff like that has been included in it. But it's hard for me to say 100% yes or 100% no. But definitely something we could keep in mind going forward.
I'm just trying to find ways to stack
Yeah.
money,
Mhm.
different money. coming in.
Any other questions for Paxton? All right, well,
Thank y'all.
I
Happy New Year.
appreciate it very much. Thank you. Okay, I see, Mr. Lumnack, Ms. Thompson, and, are here, and they probably want to have some discussion concerning the civic center, proposal. And, kind of, where we stand on it and what progress has been made. I think that, y'all have pretty much kind of narrowed down to the site out there at the industrial site. And I guess my other question that had come up today, are there any zoning restrictions or anything of that nature on it? Any input from the planning commission that needs to be looked at? Anything of that nature? I want to make sure as we start getting into something, that we got all those technicalities addressed and taken care of.
Yes, sir. Let you know where we're at. Last time we came was about 2 months ago. We presented a set of plans and looked at everything. Well, once we got into funding and all that on a building with that size, a little over 100,000 square feet with the 200 iron wind resistance for the shelter. Also, the cost on that was over $20 million from the estimated cost. And just looking at the grant money available, what we thought we can be able to raise and all that was just a little bit too much to go for. So you see, we put on your desk a couple of other new little design for it. One of them's an enclosed building, about 52,000 square feet, which will still get us enough space on the floor to have the rodeos and the any other thing, concerts or any kind of meetings we have there, your dirt bike shows, anything like that. And the other one is an open side type building where you just have the floor and the bleachers and then the covering roof and all that other. Both of them are around between, I'd say, 3 and 4 million. If you want the exacts, you got, your figures there, but it's going to be in that neighborhood range. And what we would like to ask the council for is part of the COVID money of the 125,000 to do the engineering study, which he just said you got to have that to start with before you can make any grants and loans. And that would be step one, to get the engineering down. And step two is the site, which we've looked at several around the city, and the industrial park site is flat, it's level. There's no people around to have any kind of complaints about people coming in with the civic center type building there. to answer your question, it'll be a public municipal building. So I don't think there'll be any kind of restrictions or any of that as far as to where the land's at now in the industrial park, zoning ordinances or anything there for that. So the first thing is we're asking for $125,000 of the COVID money for do the engineering study on the building to get our preliminary work done, because like I say, any grant you gotta do, you gotta have that in. Second thing is do an agreement with the city to say, if we raise the money, that and everything works together and we can get this building done within a certain amount of time, to agree to have, let us have the 32 acres out in the industrial park to build this building. That would be the two things we're looking at now that we're asking the city. And the third thing, we've got several opportunities for grants coming up through the different monies coming from the federal government, ADECA and other things. And we'd like to have the council permission to go ahead and apply for those type grants using this for the civic center.
Listen, can we, I asked y'all, because we're not in a council meeting, it's just basic work session, about putting that request on the work session for tomorrow's council meeting. You want to discuss it then?
For discussion, then we have to vote in.
You wanted to vote on something tomorrow?
Well, I guess what happens comes out of our work session, we make a determination as to if there's anything we have to vote on, or what's your deadline on your grant application?
There's really not a deadline that I know of. I do know that, I think I told you all that I talked to Alan Johnson with USDA. He said they have money right now for loans and grants, but, and I've talked to different people about different things, and some of the things that I've heard is that because the cities and counties and everything have all this COVID money that they have right now, they look much more, fluid, liquid. So, so they have plenty of money. So grants through the USDA is going to be difficult for you to get, but you could get very, very low interest rate loans if we have to let that work out. We're going to try to get some grants and just do the best we can, get raising the funds.
I would, let me ask you this, whatever funding possibilities when it comes to grants and everything, if you could get that to us, and I can get that out to the council, and we look at that the second council meeting.
Now, what do you mean?
I know you talked about USDA grants and things of this nature. but
He
you
talked
have
about
some
loans, not saying grant.
Well, she said there were some grants.
There were the grants like the infrastructure and the different things that the state's going to do through ADECA, those kinds of things.
Right.
But if we don't have the site and the 125,000, we can't, or some, it may not cost 125,000, that's just an estimate. But for engineering, but we've got to have that before we can get started on anything, applying for grants, loans, anything.
And just like you said, Mayor, so many other cities are going into this. I'm hearing that Atmore is trying to build something similar to this also and looking at it. So Larry, to answer your question a while ago, if we don't have all this in line and done, we're going to be left out from the cities that do have it all in line and done. So, we got to have this engineering studies done. We got to have a site on set, and we can say this is going to be going on. And just like y'all are talking about on this, you've got to have all this drawings done. Well, cities that apply for this money and the money's coming in now is going to have first choice before it gets to y'all. That's what we're looking at on this type of building also is, hey, we need all this done in advance while this money is being available from the federal government that we can possibly get.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm saying, is give some idea of the possible sources of funding coming from. I know you talked about the USDA, possibility of grants for them and any other. And, that's the kind of information we need to go back and try to make a decision as to whether or not what the city can do. As you know, we're dependent on revenues and things that they can come in and pay things, and we have to figure out how to budget. And at least give us some idea of what the city might be, looking at from our perspective.
Questions of how it's ownership, how is the management, how is the long range insurance, and every maintenance and everything else is gonna be handled. Who is gonna be the
Different
responsible?
cities
Who's
do
gonna
it
be-
different ways. And we'll work that out however we need to. Some cities have a management over the site that raises money from those events. And that covers electricity, covers maintenance, and covers the other information on there. Some cities run it themselves, just like y'all do the community house. They gotta go through you to rent it out and do this. So it's not a set thing on how to do it. Just different cities that got it done. Robertsdale is kind of half and half on the way they do their facilities. Andalusia has a crew that's there. They rent it out through the thing and through that little, like the IDB type board or something there. So different cities do it different ways, and we can work out whatever we need to do there, but we want it to be self-efficient, start with. In other words, if we have enough events there, concerts, rent it out for graduations, high school graduations. County High wouldn't have to have 2 tickets per person. They could have 6,000 folks in there and not have a problem. They have other events for the rodeo that's over in Frisco City, because we couldn't find a place here to have it. We had motorcycle rallies, concerts, anything doing. But you got a limit in here right now of only 500 people if you put any place in this whole place. So we're looking at sitting around 4,000 to 5,000. If you use the floor, sitting close to 6,000 people in the building. And that's needed here in Monroe. So we're looking at to be self-sufficient once we get it up, is to answer your question.
Do you have some proposals for what these things generate? What would a rodeo, what would 3 concerts, what would be this and that generate? It make it sound good, but at the tail end of it, it may not generate the $50,000 a year, and that won't be any good time.
Well, I don't want, whatever happens, I do not want the city, first of all, involved with a loan. Zero. If we can do it with grants and all, that's fine. But then once it's built, I mean, I don't want the city left on the tape for having, so, we don't have enough money to pay the light bill. I don't want the city, I really do not want the city to be involved in any way as far as money. I mean, if you can use the city, if we can help with grants or whatever, then that's fine. But as far as us signing a loan, we have too many other needs.
We're not asking for a loan.
Now, as far as the land, I don't have a problem with that. If it meets, like you say, if it meets all the, regulations and all that, that's fine.
We're not asking for city any kind of loan at this stage whatsoever. All we're asking for is the $125,000 to get the engineering study done. And then agreement with the council for the land based on us getting the money raised from other sources to build it on that property. If we don't, then the city land is still y'all. If we do that.
I know that this is kind of a project from Kiwanis. I mean, because they are would Kiwanis be willing to manage, so to speak?
Them or a group or an independent one, I think so, yes. And Louisa, Kiwanis Club man, kind of managed there. Robertsdale, they've got one person in charge that goes down there and he works through the city. So he works with that.
I have a board, just straight up board.
Yeah, on board, the board of directors. will do it.
Or you have a person in, that works that, so that they are recruiting events to be held on the weekends when the local people don't need it. Or like graduation or something, if you have someone that is recruiting, for concerts and rodeos and things like that. And one of the things that Andalusia, they told me they do as far as electrical is, if you have an event out there, and you rent the space, then they take the meter reading before and the meter reading after, and the individual has, or group that rents it has to pay for the electricity that it costs. So there are some ways that you can help to mitigate some of the expense like that too.
Mayor, Mr. Hicks have his hand into.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So my question about the civic building, it's really an event center. More than my definition of a civic center, with a pool, indoor recreation. So this is an event center. I'm all for more events. And more specifically, what 32 acres are we talking about in the industrial park?
And but there, you know,
We all pulled down at the back.
and there'll be a road, our proposal includes a road that comes from there over to Plant Drive,
Over to,
Plant Drive, a new
Oh, yeah.
road.
okay, so you will build another road out,
Yeah,
because a constant complaint we get from truckers coming into our park to load and unload is trying to get back onto Alabama. Out of the industrial park road is a son of a.
Lot of traffic.
So someday we're gonna need a light there.
I think you should try to get one when that. was
But
built.
it takes forever to get lights. But having said that, I'm concerned about traffic flow and only from this. The experience of when the food pantry had to move out of community house and they were using the M block building. That traffic was backed up, blocking Warrior Tractors driveway, which is past mine, okay? Only one day a month, and it was no big deal and not worth complaining about. But when you're gonna have a rodeo, let's say, and 3,000 or 4,000 people coming and going, it's not gonna work, if we're loading and unloading, okay? So that's a concern. So numbers of vehicles in and out, numbers of people in the neighborhood, it's a safe place, and all of that is all positive stuff. But I'm really, saying to myself, there's no other flat land around here. That is maybe shovel ready or whatever, but that's fine. We just need another road out of the park for sure. And I would prefer a road further out onto South Alabama. Plant Drive and Industrial Park Drive are pretty close. So there's gonna be traffic issues there all over the place.
But it may eventually solve your problem if we can get Plant Drive having that much traffic to get a light put
Probably
out there.
8% of the events held will be at night anyway, so. it's gonna be-
Well, we're operating till 1 a.m. every day. Except Sunday. So, what else are we here? Lost my notes. Traffic.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. We had
So
a,
we're just concerned for, the existing business and how we're going to
But to answer your question, there are other properties around, but the only landowners want so much for it, that it would be more than what the building is.
yeah.
That's what we're gonna do. We checked for some building over there, for veterans, over here off Ivory, Ivy, several other places, and the dollar value for that property is more than what we have to do with building.
Now, what about, there's no issues with.
It's lightning something.
Zoning is fine, for sure. But back, basically, we're trying to get ahead of everybody else. And then that's what we're asking the council right now is the agreement for the building and that property. If we get the money raised there without any loans or anything to do with the thing, but, and then for the 125,000, get it started out of the, I call it COVID money. But, and that would be the two things we're after part of this thing.
Can we legally put money towards this? It's not gonna be ours.
Well, that's a question in which we have to go back and, get clarification.
What did you say?
Can we legally give you money if you're saying we're not gonna be liable for any of the debt of the construction or anything?
It's still gonna be the city. If you want to own it, or you can own it, but you can lease it to however we decide to do it, what Tom was talking about.
There seems to be a money trail here that don't seem like it's gonna work. One is either it's ours or either it's not ours. And in the sense of funding or everything else down the line, those are a lot of questions that I know have not been discussed, but not been answered before to go further. And then one more question I got is what county involvement in this?
County
Coming to us.
do a lot of the site work and all the.
Do we have a confirmation and proposal from them that they will do this?
We don't yet, we're just coming before you all to start the process. We've already kind of let you know ahead of time what we're trying to do. And what Mr. Hickson said about 4,000 people coming, is that not indicative of the need for this kind of building for us? If we're gonna have 4,000 people coming in, that's a great thing, that's not.
I'm not in that point.
It is, but we don't want it to
I know.
hurt the businesses that
Of
are out
course not, yeah, I agree totally, but, just the use of it will be, like he says, night and weekends most of the time, and I do know some personal, involvement with distribution, and you have trucks in and out all the time, it doesn't matter if it's nighttime or daytime.
But the idea of having a proposal of what's could be generated and how many is also a thing. Going to a bank statement is going to, as proposal, or so a business plan as such, to go any further. I mean, these are just simple things that we would need to know before we do anything. I mean, yes, you name a rodeo, you can get that. What is it going, what kind of revenue is that going to generate? What is 4 or 5 of these other vehicles? Just because you have a concert and people charge tickets, what is the revenue that somebody's doing with 4,000 people come in? What does this event get out of that? I mean, the promoter is going to get most of the money in these type of things, if it's us or if it's somebody else. But again, as you know about promoting concerts, you know how that works out. It can be a loss leader to the person that's financing it. You were involved in some of that years ago. So I mean, there's a lot of things that haven't, many questions been answered yet. I'm in favor of it. Don't get me wrong with it. I think there's a need for it. But to get down to it, going to a banker's perspective of it, saying, will this fly? I mean, the community house is something that we lose a great bit of money on each year. It is a lot more expensive to us than what we generate at all in it. We're providing community service that's needed in this community. Until just recently, we had no other venue. But we're charging 1/3 what a person in a private operations felt that they need to even have a chance to break even in it. And we're still losing money for promoting our community house. But it's a need, it's a service we need to provide. And it's great for the community. I would definitely not like to get out of that and close it down and operate. But those are things like that. Can we afford another item that we lose money on in order to help the community?
I think I'm no lawyer, thank the Lord, but I think with the legal opinion that the Attorney General gave, I think that we can do the 125 without an issue. Because what it does, it's for the public. You could classify it as being for the public use. And if you go back and you look at section 94 of the Constitution, the one that, and that's what, the AG was doing in his little update. If it's for the public use, that's kind of the thing. The only thing I'm saying, I'm in favor of it, but I'm just not in favor of the city owning and running the event center or whatever. Whatever else we can do as far as is land, if that meets with everybody's approval, I'm for that. You know, and any of the grant stuff that we need to work with, I'm for that. But I'm just not in favor of us owning or borrowing money to pay for it.
Okay. Why don't, based on the comments that were made here, let me see if I can put together some bullet points and get back to you guys, and then we can provide some answers to those questions. Okay. And you know, we'll move forward from there. I see where there's some common ground, and I see where there's some places that, you know, some places we like this and some places we like that. So, I don't think we're gonna all get it all in one session.
I don't think we'll be able to say that the building's gonna, you know, run itself, providing enough money annually to do all of the costs. I don't think so. I could be wrong. It depends on whether the city was collecting the money for the event. You know, if we don't own it, it certainly wouldn't, but.
I mean, Paul England's a banker, or previously a banker. And I mean, if somebody comes to you with a proposal like this, would you not want a business plan for this, saying this is what we project revenue, this is what we're gonna project, it's gonna cost, and what's the debt retirement on it, and so on and so forth.
I was told by the mayor of another town that you don't have a bank committee, because that's their first.
And thank God you're on the committee and make it.
All right, we'll come back. I'm trying to get some bullet points out. We can get answers specifically in here for the council. The other item that I wanted to move forward with is that I had previously provided pretty much a wish list to. Yeah. And these were some recommendations that I went out there, I basically kind of threw them up against the wall and see what was sticking. And I wanted to go back and, first of all, one of the things is whatever we decide to move forward on, and there may be some other things for other council members. But as we move forward, whatever we do on here, we will include in the motion where we are in compliance with the policies and procedures governing the use of the American Rescue Plan funds. That would be included in the motion, and in the previous ones, Tri-States has actually provided that information. So that ensures that we're in compliance with all of their requirements, so that the city does not possess any liability moving forward with. Now, out of this, one of the things that is yet to be done is the premium pay for eligible employees. And when you talk about premium pay for eligible employees, that is capped at $13 an hour for an employee. Now, what the city can do, the city can be reimbursed for employee salaries that were increased up to $13 an hour from back in March when we implemented the pay plan. I don't think we got a whole lot of employees that we can do that, but we can recapture that funding and it will go back into the general fund. So that would be something that I would bring up and your approval from the council. We've already done the one for the one-time pay, essential employees, and some purchasing of some protective equipment. Now, there's some other things on here that I know that we get reimbursed for, and I want to move forward with it, and I'm probably asking for a motion. And that's where we replace the heating and the ventilation and the air conditioning equipment at the community house and police department.
Mayor, to make this go on good page two, second page.
Oh, okay, all right, well, I was, yeah, this is what I was looking at on page 1.
What about the pay for the volunteer firemen?
That was be something on here, I was trying to see, it's not on here, but I had it on my other sheet. Right, and that's something that, what I'm trying to do is get these down, so I can tell Mr. Scott that these are the items that we're prepared to move forward with. Some of the others on here may need further discussion, but at least we're getting some moving on. So, you know, he can go ahead and prepare the motions and everything that we need to move forward on. I know one of the things that we were talking about was, providing funding for the, pavilion at Veterans Park. And that could be, where we could use that for the.
This same page.
It's the backside.
Oh, back, okay.
This thing,
Providing, funding there at, to pay for that pavilion at Veterans Park, where we can also use for possible COVID testing, COVID vaccination site, and other things that could be used for the public use. So that was one item on there. I would like to submit that to Mr. Scott to prepare information to proceed with that. I think Mike has some preliminary numbers out there, and we were looking at something right around $30,000, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah.
And so that, we can actually look at doing that. One of the other things that came up was with the fire department. We bought the new trucks, but they, we're trying to do an equipment upgrade on the stretcher. And it's about a $5,000 upgrade that allows them some type of electrical assist, to enable them to load patients into it. We have a situation that it will come in very handy when we assisted the county with moving the person. And so it's about $5,000. There's no doubt in my mind that we can probably get that out of COVID funds. So if y'all are in agreement, ask them to prepare a motion for that purpose. One of the other things that I wanted to present to the council, and I think we can do this because of small business development under COVID, with the Downtown Redevelopment Association, that they provide grant funding in there up to $10,000 on project. And we have not had funding sufficient in there. I think we've only done it one time. And to try and put at least $20,000 in that fund. And that would help with small business development. Pavilion. Some of the other things down here is one of the things that I would like to go back and look at is providing an additional $10,000 in support of that training site there at Reed State, which I think falls under COVID funds. All of the computer server upgrades that we did, from what I understand, and I'll get his opinion on that, but I think we can charge those off the COVID funds also, is one of the things that he told me. Let's see. We already got with the ambulance, and we can probably come back and get some additional funding out of that. One of the other things that I will ask him to go back and look at is out of this source of funding that we currently have. We spent $200,000 to working on the roof there at Sterling, and there may be a way, at least out of this first round of COVID fund, that we can charge off $100,000 of that and apply it toward the block loan.
About the fountain park, I think he told me that the doors and the fans will come out of the budget. Am I
Right, that's out of the.
So it's not gonna come out.
No, that would not come out of COVID fund. That was already in the general fund, right. So that would at least get us started on on moving forward with some of this stuff. One of the other things that is happening right now is that, as we know, we're moving again with the increase in COVID in our community. And there can be funding that we can use out of this COVID money for, health fairs, community outreach, and, trying to make sure that we can probably work with the hospital to set up testing and things of that nature. And we could use, on this right here, that was one of the things that we be able to use. I put in here $9,500 for. But I think that would be something we have to work in partnership with the hospital. So there's more things there on the list, but I thought these are some things that we might be able to move forward on fairly quickly.
The pavilion is there, and you have very good thought on that, of using it as a testing site. It's like we're gonna be testing forever. But if we're gonna do that site, we need to not do it like it's a budget item and try to get it as tight as we can. We need to make sure we have it adequate. If it amounts to having power, it amounts to having a floor in it, it amounts to having access to bathrooms, or actually bathrooms there.
You're talking about.
No, I'm talking about Michael or pavilion at Veterans Park.
I would think it'd be twice that if you had bathrooms and
Well,
power. and
again,
all that.
Money, that is one to me, looks like it's a lot of these are, we want all of these, and a lot of these look like they'll be approved probably.
Right.
But that one looks like as much ground for anything to get done and get accepted would
Well,
be.
you would have to increase the size. If you're gonna have bathrooms, it would need to be at least a 40 by 80.
So that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna do that project, let's do that one right.
Okay.
I mean,
No,
mean, we're-
no issue with, we got,
yeah, and I mean,
we got funds.
we unfortunately are, we're in the sense that we probably will never spend the money we've got.
We will.
I hope we will, but I hope we can. That's the big thing. I still have
Yes, sir.
a question about what we're still allowed to. I don't want to get into spending a couple $100,000 we gotta pay back.
Well, see, that's why I'm not rushing to try and do everything at one time. I want to put something out there. We submit it, it comes back, it tells us what gives us the authority to spend this money.
Okay.
And that, we make sure when we make the motion, that what he gives us the authority, for instance, we can come back and say under section 94 of the Alabama Code, we are allowed to use these monies for this purpose. That's why to me, it was important to try and get some idea of what we can go ahead and move forward with. So we can get the motions and get the stuff back to you guys, and it goes down and has the authority there that allows us to spend this money, so we're not having to go back and talk about pay something. So, that was some of the things that, I went out and I threw out. That's why I was talking about, like the, premium pay for, the eligible employees that was under $13 an hour. The heating, the air conditioning, ventilation, the funding for the DRA in that grant there. The pavilion in Veterans Park. The M block, where it talks about M block roofing repairs, and we'll be able to go back and reimburse it and apply that toward that loan. And put it back on schedule and pay it off in 2024.
Well, right now, we've got roughly 600,000 that we've actually received.
We've got roughly right at 650,000.
Okay, so with the reimbursements for the first responders, that's gonna take up what we're looking at about 380,000. 388.50,
yeah.
and that's up to what point?
Here it says 361,000.
I've got it written in on
Right.
388.50.
Yeah, we added some.
Yeah.
380. And, a lot of that comes from, that is how much money we could go back and get reimbursed and we can put back into the general fund. We just got to justify doing it. And so that's why some of these things up here, that, when he talks about, review, it comes directly out of COVID funds and some of these other things up here, it may have to come back and tell us it needs to come out at $380,000. So that's the main purpose is, you know, what do we want to, proceed with? I was putting check mark on here. Like talking about the computer service, the M Block building, the pavilion and Veterans Park, the funding for the DRA grant, the heating and air conditioning that we talked about, and for the reimbursement for the, premium pay for the eligible employees. And the other thing, like I say, with everything that's coming up, I would check with the hospital and see if there's a way that we can partner with them, or if they need us to partner with them. It talks about the outreach and everything for COVID. And certainly with that. And so, you know, if these are, some items on here that we can go ahead, I call it a punch list, and also to pay for the firefighters that you talked about, volunteer firefighters. I will go ahead, and like I said, this is kind of like a punch list. I'll go through and I'll get him to start working on these and bring it back to the council. And then y'all can read through the motions and everything and see if it's something that is ready to be approved.
Mayor, I think what Larry was saying was, if we do in the 380, we don't want to spend any more than 270 additional
Right.
until we get additional funds.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's why, you know, sometimes slow and steady is better than going out there getting a rush. And so that's why I was trying to leave something over so we can identify any other things that come up.
There's a 380 plus the 1350 that we gave the 66 employees. That comes up to about 470.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
included that
included.
already in there. It's
That's
already-
included.
It's already
It's included
included.
in the 380.
So, if, you know, and like I say, anything else that you guys come up with, and oh yeah, the other thing I like to check with Mr. Scott, because, for the CDL training site at Reed, there was some, how we can continue to support that, and I just put in like $10,000 for it. And I'll give you some advice on how we continue to support. Okay. All right, any other suggestions? Yep. If anybody come up with one, like I say, the only thing I know is we come up with it, throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will y'all be ready to vote on this tomorrow, or you want to wait?
We probably need to give him the opportunity to talk to Mr. Scott and try and have all these motions and everything ready for the second council meeting this month. Then that way we'll have a chance to get it out to everybody prior to making a review. All right, well, that is everything that I have.
Mayor, I have one more thing, Lisa. You know, I'm concerned a little bit because we asked these citizens to start putting together a plan and look at this arena we've been talking about for 10 years and or more, and this arena event center. And they came to us asking for the 125 seed money, a commitment on the property if it goes forward, and then the ability to apply for grants. I don't see why we couldn't consider those three things tomorrow night. Unless some of y'all have an objection. I mean, I feel like we're gonna need to have the information from the engineering and the surveying and all that to be able to know how to go forward.
I'll put it on the work session, we'll come out with.
He gonna have to check with Mr. Scott to make sure.
Yeah,
I think it's good. I mean, I don't think it's private.
Yeah, I'll.
But I just, get him to check.
I mean,
But if there's not a feasible plan of actually
financing this and handling this, then we throw in $120,000 away. If there is one, and they come, and the proposal is here, and it looks anywhere legitimate that it'll make it, then $120,000 is very good investment.
So what about the location? Is that what I'm at?
The,
Local,
answer your question, Mel, and just like Larry said on the other, that, they, pros on that, sewer and water. You don't know if you're gonna get it or not, but if you got to have a plan in place to do it before you even apply, before you can even see if you're
I
gonna. get it.
understand. The applying for it in the grant stuff is a different thing than if this thing will even wash once you put it in place. I mean, y'all know something I don't know, obviously, because I don't see where the events we're having can anywhere support any kind of payment or even half.
We check with one place, we can check with other. Andalusia nets around 30 to 35,000 a year. And that's not including the Kiwanis Club net around 30 to 40,000 a year that they use facilities for the fair. So just say Andalusia, the same size, a little bit bigger than us, they're going to do around 65 to 70,000 a year in income coming in from that civic center. Okay?
Income, that's not expensive.
No, that's not expensive. That's, well, that's pretty much net. They charging people to rent it, and they charging people to do it. And then the income from the fair and other places. So you're talking income coming in that you can apply to the maintenance from Andalusia around between 60 and 70,000 a year.
I just wonder, how long has that been there, Tom?
It's
been a while.
Good long while. They got, I won't go into detail, but anyway, they got somebody to donate the land. They got somebody pretty much to pay for the buildings and stuff from a donor and this kind of thing. So they got the buildings and pretty much had to do some financing on it. Long range. Yeah, so they only borrowed like 750,000 total. And they've been paying it back.
Yeah, but $750,000 debt retirement on that, it's a 20-year payout of $60,000 or something a year, then you would have to regenerate that to even break even. And, but anyway, I just like to see a little more of the things of what these events generate towards that debt retirement, even in the pie in the sky. They say you only have to finance $100,000 of this $6 million, which I don't think will happen. But if it does, then you are going to have to finance something somewhere, somebody.
But you can't compare the community house to a civic center, because the community house is so limited to everything. You gotta look at that too.
But it rents every week.
Understand that,
But we know that going in, we only charge $500 for a rental night, and then we pay salaries for people to maintain it and work there. And we know that's going to happen as a lost leader. I agree with that point. But still,
An example of not being fully prepared, and I'm all for a civic center, don't get me wrong, was that trail up at Cold Spring. It's overgrown. Nobody's, who's gonna do the maintenance now? County, public, it's just dried up. All that money. It's gone. So I understand Melvin, and Melvin's a businessman about the business model. And when you're talking about that kind of money and all, it's just a good thing to, and obviously the work, and the Lucas made it work. Rockdale makes it work, but now they're bigger cities, so you need a business model.
there again, show us why Robertsdale is working, why Andalusia is working. Is it because Robertsdale got the money for because it was a storm shelter or whatever, however the time is called on it? They're hit it at the right time and the right location and got a lot of funding out of that, I understand. I mean, those things, but still.
Robertsville got 80% of their pay for FEMA money.
Yeah.
They're building for that whole fairground.
And they closed the other fairground down with a park out of it and went over there and did that. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff I want to
Do
hear.
you want it to, do you want a business plan that shows that it's gonna make the city money?
No, I want a business plan that shows we'll be anywhere near making a break even for somebody. In a $6 million expenditure for building it, which is not better than 20 million we talked at one time. But if you get 4 million of somewhere, grant money and government money and so on and so forth out of it, or even all the way down, like I said, $700,000. What will it take to generate that to make it fly at some point for us or anybody else?
Those are a lot of the questions that you have to answer for a grant or a loan application. And so all of that would come in with the studies that you must do for that.
But you're saying you're talking to these places and cities, but what the needs of them generate? I mean, do they generate what you said for fairground paper? A concert and so on and so forth. There's got to be statistics out there in these cities that say this is what we generate from an event.
And how many events do they have to have to generate, that kind of income? We know we can have one rodeo, but
Jim had a business plan and he's trying his damnedest to make it work. And he's got a vision out there that will work at some point with that. At times, it's not working as good as he wants it to, but he's got a vision that is still going to make what he wants it to make out. That's why he's here. Same way why we want to be here with this is we want to have some vision of what its potential would make. Not just say we want to do it and we'll go at it from there. I mean, I'm not asking you for everything. I'm just asking for something. That's for me personally. Everybody else may not care about that. I want to say, I don't want for a situation we are right now where we just sold a building at a loss and we're still financing and paying for it. And somebody had a vision at that time to build that spec building out there.
and we got a $500,000 debt and no jobs. That's what keeps in my mind.
That's what I keep hearing when somebody says, well, y'all did that. No, not we.
Wasn't
But the difference between this project and the trail, as Mike mentioned, is that this has public support. I mean, the public wants this. I think it's something that's so important to our community. And I think that we've got that on the front end. We've got the support for it.
Yeah, you got the support of it, but you got to be able to figure out how, without doing public funds, putting us in jeopardy of not doing some of these other projects that need to be done too.
Well, I think tomorrow we got some first steps that we'll start to work on taking and proceed from there and continue to gather some information on.
I'll try to have more information. I'll spend as much time tomorrow as I can getting other city funding.
All right. I was about to go, but I have one other thing that came in from the Monroe County Museum. They are now the sponsors of the Literary Festival that was being done by Coastal Alabama. And they have came through with a request for $15,000 in order to put this festival on, start on March 4th and 5th, and they were requesting that from the city. We did not budget $15,000 for any of this. The only option I know that we might could have is to see if it might would be eligible for ARP. Because it does deal with tourism and commerce. So I can give this to Mr. Scott and get a determination on it, and get back to the council and see if in fact we can do this. And if not, I don't know, if they don't get the 15,000, I don't know if that jeopardizes the festival and if there's some other way that we can assist.
Coastal Community College guaranteed when they did the merger that they were not going to take anything that they were doing. They would support the community like they always have. Just not going to face it when doing that. They pull the flat them out of everything the most. Usually for that. When I was at that meeting, that they promised that.
Yes, sir. Well, we hit with it, and like
Yeah,
I
I
say,
know.
out of our general fund, we did not get any request or anything at the time to budget for. So that's the only other place I know that, we might be funding. And I'd have to see if it would be allowed, because it could go through and have an impact on our economic outlook.
I haven't seen the agenda, but, you can check and keep it concerning about we are. And,
Oh, yeah.
is that on the agenda?
it- We'll be in executive session.
Over there.
Plan B on this. We may have, I talked to the county just in case, like, we better get half of that, we just get them half. If we ask for that, don't go back to them.
Yeah, I know. Like I say, I'll try and contact them tomorrow, where they stand. And what their position is. But I just want to let you guys know that, if we do go through it, something that's not budgeted, I'm not sure if it'd be eligible for ARP funding or not. I'm gonna ask that question, I just got that. Okay. All right, well. If that's all I have, yeah. Councilman Group, Tamika does have to talk about the civic center, we're gonna put that on the agenda in the session tomorrow. See what we come out with. And Councilman McDaniel, I think I answered your question about the park down there, in that fund, got anything
Yeah,
else?
he said he was gonna get it out. It's already in.
Yeah, it's already in the
budget.
budget. All they have to do is get in touch, we can get that done. I think you had some questions about different areas, and hopefully that, there's infrastructure plan to deal with it. Got any other suggestions? Not right now. I mean, I know, you brought up, one deal about infrastructure. We see what we can do with it and include the other stuff, and that's what we go through and review. I don't know if there's anything else you want to look at as far as the ERP funds are concerned.
Yeah, it can be made down the road. I really want to do something about the truck drivers. Like, and then we'll hold up on Main Street.
Talk to Mike about that this month. Mr. Hunt?
Just keep Chestnut and Golf Drive as number one on the list.
Yes, sir.
All right. At this time.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate y'all coming in. I think, you have given us some, direction. Hopefully, some of the questions, have been answered about, the expenditure of the ARP fund, and that we would definitely include in there the sections of the act that allows us to do this, so that the city doesn't incur any liability. So there being, no further issues here, I guess we adjourn.
We're gonna make a motion to adjourn this emergency special call meeting.
A second.
All in favor?